Hello, my name is Victoria Luisi, and I'm the marketing coordinator at Lincoln Park Zoo. I'm excited to share with you some of the tools and learnings we discovered last year in a time of very quick transition to make our virtual events successful, and hopefully some of our findings may help you at your organizations too. So Lincoln Park Zoo is a privately managed nonprofit zoo in Chicago, Illinois that is free and open to all 365 days a year in a normal year. While offering 49 acres of beautiful lush gardens and cultivated animal habitats, we are also home to one of the largest zoo-based conservation and science programs in the country. World-class animal care and conservation efforts are at the core of what we do every single day. And our zoo scientists are dedicated to conserving wildlife both here at home and then around the world as well. Today, our zoo scientists are studying how we use cities, leading conservation research in the savannas and forests of Africa, and monitoring behavior to improve the welfare of zoo animals here and around the world. To make that conservation work that we do a reality, our events provide a large revenue source for us. In a normal year, we produce over 50 events, from smaller experiences like breakfast with the animals to more large-scale events, like our month-long Zoo Lights, which is held in December. Our events hold a variety of interests and attract many different audiences, like our Summer Wine Fest, a Run for the Zoo, which is our annual marathon or race-style event, a 2-day craft beer festival, Pilates with the primates, and nights at the zoo, among many others. Our events all hinge on their location, so they take place at the zoo and are all banking on folks coming to the zoo to experience the event, to experience our mission, to experience and engage with our organization, and then to provide that source of revenue that we need to operate every year. We also promote these events either with event partners or through our known audiences. Many of these events in our calendar are annual events the zoo has done for years, so we don't have a lot of education that we need to do with our current audience base on what these events are all about. But now, in this new environment and landscape in 2020, we had to pivot very quickly, transitioning to 100% digital promotion, which meant nothing on grounds, and ensure that our evaluation tools were up to the task. So today, I'm here to share with you the story of how we quickly pivoted to virtual events and what tools we use to make sure our promotional efforts hit our new audiences. To tell you more about our experience in pivoting our virtual events, here's an example of an event that quickly shifted online, our animal experiences. What was once a bonus for being on site or on grounds at an in-person event turned into a virtual event series that people ended up really loving. In person, these experiences with our meet and greets were great. People could still see the animals in their habitats and ask questions of our zookeepers on site if they were out and on grounds. But there wasn't a guarantee that you would necessarily see the animal or have your question answered, just due to a variety of factors. Maybe there was a larger crowd that day for that event, you couldn't necessarily hear or see the zookeeper, or maybe the animal chose not to be in their habitat that day. Because of our strict animal welfare policy, animals have the choice of where they choose to spend their time. So they could choose that time inside in their indoor habitat or outside where guests can see them. But when we started doing these animal experiences online, shifting the feel of the event to a more intimate Q&A type experience, that changed completely. Folks could now see animals like they had never seen before at the zoo and could ask questions of our experts live and know that their question would be answered. We received a lot of positive feedback about this new format and love from our zoo supporters on being able to see the animals in these new ways. This ended up solving a problem that we didn't know we had before. Moving these mission-based events to online also meant we had greater access to evaluate their successes to get specific feedback on how they connected with our mission and what they'd like to see next. They could receive a survey prompt right there and could provide feedback in the moment or right after, all while it was still fresh in their minds. That kind of follow-up wasn't as possible with our in-grounds and in-person event experiences. For us, incorporating our mission into our events is a top goal for every single event that we do at the zoo, but can be a struggle at times, especially when the event is something like a craft beer festival. But in this new environment, it allowed us to reimagine old favorites or come up with completely new events and concepts and create those virtual events through the lens of our mission. While we had our on-grounds events trying to get out the mission message, under the umbrella of a wine fest or a similar event, we had all the content and resources online. On our Facebook page, our Instagram, YouTube, website, all of that knowledge was online. The bridge to turning event goers into Lincoln Park Zoo fanatics was slowly being built while events were on grounds. But in this new virtual landscape, it fast-tracked that construction. For us, the pros of going virtual meant our audience expanded so much more than it had ever before. And it let us try out new things without the fear of big budgets and capacity restraints. We reached more folks than ever before with our organic social efforts, growing our engagement to numbers we had never experienced. That huge bump in organic efforts meant that we could target a whole new audience on the paid side, and that was really exciting. But there were also so many challenges, especially when it came down to tracking performance and evaluation of our ads. First, we faced a lot of competition in the area in Chicago, and folks were getting very tired of virtual events pretty quickly, so we had to come up with new content very, very fast. It also meant we had to quickly reassess how we promoted these events and how we were tracking our successes, and more specifically, where this new audience was coming from and what they wanted to see. There were so many questions that we had to solve for and data we didn't have to figure those answers out, so we had to quickly figure out what to do. I quickly realized that the pivot to virtual wasn't going to be as simple as I had initially thought. So these were three of our larger changes that we had to adapt for pretty quickly. Before COVID, our audience was largely local, based either in Chicago or around Chicago or to some of our neighboring states. But now we reached an international audience we would have never dreamed of reaching before. With our people tuning into our Facebook Lives from all around the world and accessing our online content from anywhere, we had to quickly move to keep this new audience engaged. Also, a large chunk of our revenue was coming from our events. Now, as we instantly pivot to virtual, we had to figure out how to shift our messaging to incorporate more need while also providing people the quality of events that they're used to all year long in a normal year at the zoo. Then our audience tracking tools for our on-grounds events were fit for those in-person experiences in a normal year. But now in this new digital landscape, we needed to quickly adapt to figuring out what evaluation tools we needed for this new landscape and do it very quickly. So where are we now? After a year of going virtual, the first of those three big changes that we had to adapt for was this brand new audience. It seemed like we got them overnight. With our robust organic effort in engaging people with the zoo who couldn't be on grounds anymore or couldn't see their favorite animals in person anymore because of the shutdown, we amassed a larger audience than we had ever seen before online. But now that people are used to connecting with us online from being that only touch point to the zoo for so long, what do we do now? How does our messaging change? How do we keep them engaged? We can't forget about them moving forward. So that's something that we're definitely grappling with here in the present. With this wider audience came greater opportunity for us to connect them to our mission. We did this with those virtual animal meet and greet events, utilizing the talent and resources that we have in-house to create a very low expense event that is completely mission-based. We can't move forward into whatever our new normal looks like now without forgetting about this wider audience that we spent the whole year cultivating. But then how does that blend into our event promotions? For us, that translated to connecting what we were doing organically more with promoting our events. We had to ask the question, how connected are our event promotion efforts with our other promotion efforts? For us, it was seeing that these two things don't just coexist, but need to blend into each other to be successful in the virtual format. This meant more event mentions and crossover with other initiatives in zoo departments, frequent visibility on our social channels, and making events an accessory to anything that was being done at the zoo, not just an add-on. Our next big change came from how we started to look at virtual events as a concept. Virtual is now our playground to try things we would have never been able to try before because of cost or capacity or time, like classes and meet and greets. For example, in a normal year, we offer in-person penguin encounters where you and a small group of others can sit inside of our penguin habitat and watch as penguins interact around you and ask questions of the keepers and zoo experts in that habitat live in person. These types of experiences, while really fun and awesome and people love them, are also very limited. They only happen during the summer months and at a very small capacity for people to sit inside the habitat. But now pivoting to virtual, we're able to open this up to such a wider audience, still allowing people to access the knowledge and the talent of the keepers and zoo experts on staff, seeing the penguins that they love on camera, but also opening this up to many other animals that weren't possible to have with an in-person or live event before. Recently, we did another kind of new concept for us looking at virtual events as this playground, which is a virtual trash cocktails class. We connected a drink making class to our conservation message. And this would have been harder to execute in person because we don't have the capacity to necessarily hold a class. We don't have the resources to do something like that in person, and it would have been a larger expense for us to do on site. But doing it virtually allowed us to operate with a very low overhead, connect with a new event partner we would have never had before, and connect this conservation message to the event in a much easier capacity than we would have had before. Virtual event ideas don't always work out though, and we very much learned that the hard way. We tried that with an idea we had for a virtual storytime and sing-along event for families with young children. We didn't get the response we needed for it and ended up having to cancel the event. But because it was virtual, our loss was just a drop in the bucket, and it ended up helping us understand our audience that much more too. As a side note, we now know that children are done being on camera and on Zoom. So that was our big takeaway with that one. So how can you look at virtual events as the wall to throw your spaghetti on? And what can you be okay with trying and possibly failing at and being okay with learning those lessons along the way? For us, this also evolved not into just our paid ads, but in our organic marketing efforts as well. Facebook Lives became a great way for us to build a new audience and then tie that into our events. Small ideas like, would people be interested in seeing more of snakes? Would be the inspiration for a Facebook Live video. Then based off of that feedback and response, we cultivate a virtual event around the reptile lovers in our audience. So looking at virtual events, not as a necessary burden that we have to execute to keep up, but as a playground to try out new ideas without the need of those bigger budgets and larger labor expenses. Opened up a world of possibilities for us and gave us new event partners we would have never had before, and a way to connect with these audiences that we hadn't seen before either. Our last but most important big change was in what tools we are using to evaluate the success of these virtual events. Now that budget shrunk overnight, the dollars that we had were few and expected to go farther than they ever needed to before. So easy to understand reporting and detailed data recaps were important for us to evaluate what was working and what needed to change really quickly. For us, we had a couple of top questions we wanted to answer, which dictated what tools we were missing from our evaluation toolbox. Where was this new audience coming from, and what did they care about? What were they interested in seeing more of from us? In combining digital tracking tools with an evaluation plan, we were able to start our journey to answering those questions. But to be very honest, it is completely overwhelming to know where to start and know what to use. So we started with the things that we could control and have access to. And so first, that was with Eventbrite Boost. Using the Eventbrite Boost platform for our paid social ads has completely changed the game on how we create and evaluate our ads and their performance. For us, we wanted to be able to see all of our campaign performance in one easily digestible place, and it was easy to read and share with others. We also wanted an easier way to create and save our audiences that we were using for our paid ads and using across all platforms. And Eventbrite Boost delivered that for us and so much more. First, with audience creation, it became so much easier to not only create audiences, but track performance based on those specific audiences. Because of the integration with Eventbrite, it was incredibly easy for us to not only create audiences from Facebook and Instagram's audience creation options, but from Eventbrite's, as well as connecting our email client to this and our website. So we could create audiences from all of the platforms that we're on and that we use. It's made it so much easier for me to do as the marketing person at the zoo, and also saved me so much time, not having to bounce from database to Excel spreadsheet to platform back to database. It just saved me an incredible amount of time and ended up being a big lifesaver for me, especially during a very chaotic year of virtual events. Another big selling point for us is with how we can organize and see our campaigns as a whole. For Lincoln Park Zoo, we utilize Facebook advertising for almost all of our events and zoo initiatives. And with events going virtual in 2020 and budget shrinking, it became our main source of advertising, allowing us to have the widest reach for the smallest amount of money. Because we had so many virtual events going on at one time, Eventbrite Boost's campaign organizing capability helped us to not only keep me organized, but helped to see reporting in one easily digestible place that was very easy to read and share with my supervisor as well. And it was so much easier than getting and putting everything into Excel and trying to figure out the numbers all by myself. For example, on the slide is our campaign for our August 2020 virtual events. Eventbrite Boost took all the data from our completed ads in that campaign and provided a really clear report that was easy to share and easy to read. And it ended up showing these ROAs that I honestly couldn't have figured out in Excel myself. Saved me a lot of time, and it was so much easier to report out. And that was a really big perk for me. And on the reportings note, the last stamp of approval came with the user-friendly reporting that Eventbrite Boost gives us. It makes A/B testing make so much more sense and so much easier to visualize, letting us compare different creative and copy over various ads in ways that Facebook doesn't do very well. It's a perfect tool for organizations starting to utilize paid social ad strategies and who wish to see and compare performance in an interface that is user-friendly and very easy to digest. A total win-win for us. The second tool we really took hold of to track where people are coming from is in Google campaign tracking. And Google Analytics, to be very honest, can be a scary Middle-earth environment, but with the right trackers, it can be much easier to navigate and give you all sorts of useful insights. For us, we started using Google's free custom URL builder for our campaigns to track where clicks are coming from. We have a set email schedule with emails going out to market our events and other zoo initiatives every week to different audiences. In order to start tracking the amount of web traffic our event pages or other initiative pages on our website were getting, we started using these custom URLs to see exactly who was coming to our website and who they were. This is a great tool to use for those links that have content that don't change, like a buy tickets now button for one same event, or a donate now button for your donate page on your website. Now I can see the performance of a campaign based on that specific URL. Are people clicking on the link from my email? What percentage of the total traffic on my website is from this specific link? This operates similarly to the tracking links in Eventbrite, but is for your website and gives you so much useful data on your audience so you can get an in-depth picture of who these people are and where they're coming from. The best part is that this is free to use as long as you have Google Analytics set up for your website. For our limited budget, this became a perfect pair to Eventbrite Boost to start evaluating the success of our advertising and to measure where folks were coming from. So now as we look to the future, we develop these key takeaways. While we're eager to get back to in-person events again, elements of virtual are not going to go away for us anytime soon. Our social strategy has completely changed now, and hybrid events are just going to have to become the norm for us. Connecting who can't be at your event has become more important than ever for us now that we're seeing we have amassed this large audience that we've never had before. So we have to keep them engaged and connected. Not everyone who engages with us now lives in Chicago or even in Illinois at all, but we want to still keep them coming to our events. So we'll continue this hybrid model for virtual events. Coming up, we have our popular Adults Night Out event, returning in person with limited capacity on zoo grounds. And we've paired that with a virtual event focused around the same theme, giving us the ability to connect with both our local audience coming from Chicago and around, as well as that international audience that we tapped into this whole past year on our organic social side. Utilize virtual events as your sandbox. What ideas that you had to throw out before because of cost or capacity or labor restrictions can you try now in this virtual format? What would be a great add-on to your already existing in-person events? For us, this is going to be a place where we like to try new things or test new event partners and see what works with these different audiences that we cultivated this past year. And then for us, it's all about continuing to build our evaluation toolbox. Now that we have the data, how can we translate that into our database? Or do we need other tools? It's all about coming up with that list of initial questions that you don't have answers to, whether that be about your audience or what data that you're missing on your side as you evaluate your ads. Then trying to answer them with what you have access to and what you can control, and then starting to answer them with the data that you can gather with either your new tools in place or some new strategies that you've developed. Where are those holes in your data? For us, that was utilizing Eventbrite Boost on the paid social ad side, and then getting more granular with Google Analytics and custom campaign tracking. Paired with a survey strategy, we're on the way to mapping out a successful digital customer journey. So as your regular events start to come back, think about what ideas were held back before by their physical nature. What can you try? What ideas would have been cost prohibitive before, maybe capacity prohibitive? Go back into the vault or use this as a tool to engage your staff. Can any of those ideas be translated into virtual, or would any of them make relevant add-ons to your current existing in-person events? Don't forget about that new wider audience you cultivated this past year when everything went digital, because they'll still need to be in the loop. And then what questions are unanswered about your audience? Is it where they're coming from, how they're getting to you, what they're clicking on, who they are? Having those questions identified can help lead you to what problems you need to solve, and then what tools you need to put into your evaluation toolkit to solve them. For us, it was figuring out where this new audience was coming from and what people were really interested in. And so that helped narrow down the tools we needed within our capacity, and had started our digital evaluation toolkit with Eventbrite Boost and that custom Google campaign tracking. And then, of course, remember that this is just a starting point. You don't need the final product at the very start. That was something I had to remind myself every single day last year as we were trying to adapt and change quickly. Just start with what you have access to and then go from there, filling in the gaps with what you need as you answer those questions and get more familiar with your new audiences. So I hope that this will be helpful for you and your teams as you move forward in this new virtual in-person hybrid format. Thank you.